So, what's up, everybody? My name's Dominic Palombi. I'm a drummer, performer, educator, and composer and Twitch streamer, and it's great to have you guys here. If you're just checking out this second episode of our podcast, make sure you check out our first episode featuring three of my good friends from New York City that are also fellow Twitch streamers. This second episode I have featuring the great drummer, Mr. Shawn Crowder from the band Sungazer. You guys have seen him on YouTube. You guys have seen him all over the internet. He plays with many musicians all around the world. This guy is quite a monster, and I'm very thrilled to have him joining us for our second episode of our podcast today. Shawn, how you doing, man? How you feeling right now?
Good, good. Thank you for this introduction. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And yeah, again, I'm very excited for my very first stream. And you got quite the thing going on here, so
Hey, man.
definitely stoked to
Twitch is.
be
I'll
here.
I'll
So
tell you right now, man. Twitch is such a very interesting experience because compared to like I think all the other live streaming platforms that you probably see nowadays, I don't know why I get this different feeling when I'm on here streaming on this platform regularly compared to like you see how people stream normally on YouTube versus Instagram, Facebook. Twitch has this different experience where the community is even more supportive sometimes, and there's really great people that come through that are just willing to, if you believe in something, there's going to be a audience of people that you'll actually find. And it took me a while to get the stream where it is today. But funny enough, it's just something I find interesting every time when somebody asks me, how is this Twitch thing going or what is it all about? So I know, for your first time, you'll hopefully get to experience some of the magic that happens here alongside of the shenanigans, I guess, as I like to call it.
the shenanigans are the magic.
I don't know how much you mess with shenanigans in your life or nowadays, even musically speaking, or if you have any
Oh,
shenanigans.
I'm all about it.
All about it.
Yeah.
Well, why not we get into kind of how we met a little bit. First off, I've been following you on YouTube for a while. I've always been a fan of your drumming, and always been a fan of the way you think about approaching educating people. But what really procured your start for getting into this whole music thing in general? Take me back. I want to know what little Shawn Crowder
Hmm.
was when he was a kid before he even saw this drum instrument.
Okay. Well, before I saw the drum instrument, well, actually, I don't know if that's possible because I grew up in a somewhat musical family, you could say. My dad plays drums, not professionally, but it was always in the house. My grandpa also plays drums, and yeah, so it was kind of there, but I didn't start playing until I was 10. And then I started playing basically because my parents said that you should well, they said basically you're going into sixth grade and you need to play an instrument, or you should try playing an instrument for the school band. The only instrument that I wanted to play was drums, and so yeah, so that was it. Like they made us fill out a little piece of paper at school that had like first, second, third choice for instruments, and I put drums and just like left the whole thing blank. It's like if I can't play drums, I don't want to do the rest of it. But yeah, I guess I did it kind of like at the beginning for the first few years, but over time, I don't know, it just became an obsession, and I yeah just stuck with it.
I can kind of relate to you on that level where it's like I didn't grow up necessarily in a musical family. Actually, if anything, we probably talked about this when we first met. My family wasn't necessarily a musical family, so the real musical connection actually I had was my mom's dad was a singer in a barbershop quartet when he was in his young ages. And I still
Hmm.
actually have mementos from when he used to sing. So like I have like little I have little cufflings or a little tie clip that have like little musical notes on there. Even my mom and her sister, when they were in grade school, they actually, for a long time, had a lot of like talent show experience. I don't know if you had any of that while you were in grade school along those lines. But it was just something that was like kind of a knack for me. I also started when I was 10, and it was actually sisters that like got me influenced, because it was like when you go through that normal grade school retro, or that kind of like that routine where you get to fourth or fifth grade, they say, "Hey, are you interested in music?" And I think if I remember correctly, it was for me. It was also drums, and then I tried trumpet, and then I tried violin. But I was already taking drum lessons by that time. So, but that's fascinating, having like a dad as a drummer and a grandfather as a drummer. Did you look up to them a lot when you first got started? So were you taking lessons from either of them once you kind of started to get interest along those lines, or was it just
Yeah, yeah. I would say my dad was kind of, you could say, my first drum teacher. Um, and in fact, I remember very clearly the first thing that he showed me was we weren't on the drums. We were like in a car or something, and he just showed me this, like, the simplest beat you can possibly do, which is right hand, both hands, right hand, both hands.
yeah?
And I remember that so distinctly, um, for whatever reason. But I always think about that because um, it kind of, when people ask me like how much of a role, say, talent plays, or how much of a role like your, the amount you practice plays, and like how um, good you can get at an instrument. I always think about that moment, because at that moment, that one beat was the only thing I could do on the drums, and every single coordination thing, and all the way up to the most extreme, complicated seeming polyrhythms, and like every single thing that I learned after that was built, one at a time through practice. So yeah, I always felt that I had zero talent, that I had nothing, like I had to work for it all. Um, but anyway, that's a whole other can of worms. But
I also agree, because we could have a total another conversation what we believe by what is talent and what is hard work, or what is like the young jazz musicians of our generation that are like playing like they're already in their 20s or in their 30s, that are teens. Whether they naturally, was it a gift, was it a talent, was it hard work along those lines. So it's fascinating to know that you worked really from the ground up. I know for me too, it was relatively the same experience for me, at least, like, because I originally wanted to take piano as my first actual musical instrument for lessons. But the school I went to with my sisters that were going to, naturally, they didn't have enough room for piano students. Do you play any other instruments outside of drums, actually?
yeah, a bit of piano, a tiny bit of guitar. I had to take piano lessons for like a year, I think, in order to join the school band as a percussionist, because you have to play mallets, you have to play xylophone, and all that other stuff. Um, so yeah, I understand the musical theory stuff, like as far as harmony and whatnot goes, like from a keyboard background, and I know a few guitar chords, but not enough to like perform anything, um, even like simple on either instrument. I mean, if I practiced, I could do it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I totally
mainly
understand.
it's mainly drums.
When was the moment that like things started to click for you? So like you let's say I would believe you probably went through the regular band regiment through school, pretty much like going through wind ensembles, jazz bands, marching bands, even if you did all of that, or none of that. There's people that I believe that went through both sides of the story. I'm curious to know, like, when was the moment that it finally like clicked in your brain that you wanted to do this for the rest of your life?
Um, yeah. So first of all, I did all of those things. I definitely like was looking for any and every opportunity I could to play. So yeah, definitely every single school band, every chance to jam with friends outside of school, I was definitely into that. Um, to answer your main question, what was the point where it clicked? Somewhere at the beginning of high school. Um, I don't know if there was a single point but I can remember, yeah, I would say ninth or yeah, maybe even, I don't know, between let's say eighth and 10th grade, there was like a period of getting very serious about it. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I do remember one moment when I was in anyway in that time period, where whenever exactly it was, and I remember that my band director, I changed schools. It must have been the beginning of high school then. So anyway, I had this new band director, and I overheard from a friend that the band director thought I was the best drummer in the group, and that really shocked me because I always thought I was like a very average player, like compared to everybody else, like in the years before that. And so I think that that was one of the early sparks that made me think, oh, maybe I can at least be good at this. Um, and then over the next few years, it just like snowballed, and um, I don't know. I had lots of interests like growing up as a kid outside of music, but for whatever reason, it just something clicked during that formative period, um, and yeah, it just became super serious, and I just like never really looked back.
I kind of find it interesting because like everybody has their own kind of individual path. I think you could agree with this with regards of like we all have our own individual ways on how we kind of got into this drumming circle or this drumming family or this community that exists. Like once you start to play the instrument, you really just start to actually embody what it means, or you start to like finally understand the history behind this instrument too. It's just fascinating to me, like knowing that okay, it clicked for you in eighth to 10th grade. It was kind of a similar for me, where I remember I actually had my first ever like drum solo in jazz band at like 7th grade. I still remember it to this day of like Gordon Goodwin's Jazz Police. I don't know if you know that tune or not. It's kind of it's okay. Some people, I guess, some people like think that Gordon Goodwin's music can be a little cheesy. I personally still dig it. There's a lot of really great stuff that he writes. And it was that moment on that I was like, I really enjoy this drumming thing, and it I guess it goes to show when you're really working hard, and it's something that like you feel like you can't look back towards trying to do anything else. Did you actually have any other second thoughts with regards of like if this drumming thing wouldn't work out that you'd consider doing something else?
Um, no. That's the short answer. No. Until I had kind of accomplished all the things that I set out to do. So like after I had gone and toured around the world, and I had like made all this cool music that I liked, and after I'd achieved all this stuff, then I was like, now what? Like I can always play bigger shows, but like that won't really make me happier. I don't need to play stadiums to, I don't know, like that's not going to make me any happier than playing in a club or a theater, So, um, yeah, so there were a couple of years much, much later down the line where I thought, yeah, I kind of like did everything. So like, do I just keep doing this? And which I kind of, that's as, let me organize my thoughts here. If I'm thinking about when I was younger, I always had this idea in mind that I would just, you can never finish with the musical instrument. Like there's always things you can learn. And so like, I just had this, I just assumed that I would just always keep wanting to progress and to learn. Um, and then, yeah, once I was confronted with this, like, wow, I actually like did a lot of the stuff I wanted to, if not all of it, then yeah, like, do I keep going or should I like change course? Like, could learn something entirely new and go in a totally different direction. But um, yeah, I don't know. So those kind of questions were rolling around in my mind for a couple of years, and then I don't know. I never found anything outside of music that was as convincing. Like I just, you know, I couldn't see myself doing anything like with the same intensity and the same like fire. So I just like kind kind of refocused on music. Uh, so I guess yeah, in a way, like yeah, there were some doubts, but that came much later on. When I was younger, I wanted nothing else but to like be the best musician I could be, and put a lot of other stuff to the side in order to do that.
I feel that. I feel like, the same for me, where it's just like, you get to a point in your life where you try to think, is there other things that you would consider doing? Or, if you get to a point in your career where you feel like you've quote unquote made it, but I think, it's great that you say you're still not finished, or even now, I still try to think about, what are some ultimate goals that we want to achieve as musicians. I guess it's just interesting because, like, for me, for the longest time, I'm still struggling to find out what I ultimately want to be doing. I don't know if you feel the same way, whether, Sungazer is like your ultimate thing that you like to be, doing world tours with that band, or if there's like another artist that you want to do, or do you keep yourself like very wide open for any opportunities so you just continually can kind of work? Or is there a point where you feel like maybe there's a domino effect that could result into, maybe let's say your biggest gig yet?
That's a good question. I think there's a balance. There's like a line you got to walk between setting specific goals, which can be really helpful, but then also being open to whatever comes up, because you have very little control over what opportunities come to you, um, unless you're doing your own project, I guess. So I guess I've um, seen both sides of it, like where as a sideman, you don't know what opportunities are going to come. And so the only thing you do have control over is what skills you choose to develop, and who you choose to hang out with, and, you know, uh, I don't know, the kinds of gigs you do. And, there's a certain number of factors you can control: how well you learn the music, and if people are gonna recommend you to other people after you play a gig. That's a big one. But beyond that, I think it's pretty wise to be open to different things. To give you a pretty big example in my own life, for let's see, in like 2014, I started touring with a Tunisian singer named Amal Mathlouthi, who plays this like amazing electronic music. She sings in Arabic and English, but it's something I never would have expected to, that I would never would have expected to be playing like electronic North African music. It's just like it fell in my lap because I had the skills with the electronics, and I knew the right people that recommended me. So yeah, so I think you definitely have to be open. Um, I mean, goal setting is helpful, but yeah, it's very hard to say like I want to play with Wayne Shorter or something, and like specifically manifest that. I mean, not to say it's impossible, but yeah, I think
It's almost kind of like, you can open the Pandora's box of possibilities, and you won't know kind of what to expect along those lines, or what's going to potentially come out of that, in that sense too. Like you said, I bet you didn't know about that electronic, or you didn't even probably think twice about getting that gig with that singer for that electronic music band. I bet that was like a very new experience for you once it kind of fell on your lap, right?
totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, again, I had no reason to expect that I would, you know, I mean, I didn't even know that that kind of music existed, but it was like enough within my world of like I can do this, that um, I was able to do it, and then that like pushed me in so many interesting and unexpected directions in my life. Like I ended up like, so she's from Tunisia, so she worked, at that time we were working with a lot of French musicians, because in Tunisia they speak Arabic and French as native languages. She also lived in Paris before that. So anyway, I ended up like working with a lot of musicians from France and Tunisia, and I like learned how to speak French because I was hanging out with them. And then I ended up like, I don't know. I partially am here in Berlin because of all the touring I was doing, with that group. So I never would have expected that either. So you just never know what life will give you.
That's I guess that's the exciting part of life that we always have to constantly remember too. It's going to take you in different directions. Like, when I graduated college, I didn't think I was going to be streaming on Twitch 4 years ago or anything along those lines. It's because of, meeting actually it's because of going to gaming conventions with friends just for fun that led to learning about the whole video game music community, and then like meeting musicians and people in New York from that community that actually quote unquote led us to us being together. For the people that are watching right now, I'll give you guys the insight. I went to a 8-bit big band show in New York City probably about like a couple months ago. I want to say before quarantine hit. And Adam Neely was playing with the band at the time. I actually didn't know Shawn was there, but coincidentally, we just bumped into each other near the end of the show, and we started to chat about stuff. And I told him, "Hey, I really admire your content and stuff." So, you know, thanks to that, here we are, and it's quite amazing. Like you were saying, we're always going to be in an interesting perspective on where life is going to take us, especially with our line of work. We have to keep ourselves kind of open. I kind of want to dive into more of the electronic music direction because I've played so many different styles of music in my life, even just playing the covers here on Twitch, or even working with a bunch of different musicians all over the tri-state area. Talk about your experiences with electronic music. How has that influenced your playing, and what ways has it changed your thinking process when you're trying to come up with new ideas?
Okay. Let's see. So there's a few different angles we could attack this from. On one level, you have like actual acoustic drumming that's influenced by electronic music. And maybe my first exposure to that was probably like Jojo Mayer, right? He was the big one that
of course,
popular.
Everybody knows Jojo Mayer.
Yeah, Questlove as well. I mean, these guys that were doing stuff on the drums live that were originally programmed, and that I always found interesting, and I always enjoyed like learning how to play pop songs, like for weddings or whatever, that had programmed drum parts, because often you would have these interesting like producer created beats that a drummer would never think of, and so I always thought that was kind of cool to reverse engineer it, to borrow a term from JoJo. But then on a like the technological side, or the gear side of things, when I dove into electronics, like pretty seriously, I don't know, 2012 or 11, somewhere around that time, that like really changed the course of the kinds of gigs I was doing and was able to do. Because at that time, there were very few drummers that had like an SBD drum pad or like anything like that. So yeah, so I don't know. It's just another tool that has become like so ingrained in my toolbox that I can't imagine not having that as an option. It's almost like in your stick bag, you carry around your sticks and your mallets and your brushes, and you got your electronics too. I don't think electronics are a good replacement for acoustic instruments, but they also do things that acoustic instruments can't do. So
I was about to say, I see so many people actually on Twitch with, this being your first time. There's a various amount of drummers on here, especially those that are watching us currently, that actually, stream playing electronic kits a lot of the time. And actually, I see quite often more of that than acoustic drummers, though there are plenty of musicians that are popping on this platform nowadays that it's like you kind of see a little bit of everything. But I totally agree. Nothing kind of beats the real deal. I started with the electronic, or I started with the acoustic drums when I was 10, and it's just kind of one of those things where you can't necessarily replace the real deal. Even like when you go back to the old days of recording, where the recording gear was like so minimal. Using if I believe correctly, it was like a record player. They would have to like put one microphone in the back of the room, or any of the old 1920s 30s jazz recordings. You'd hear the drums in like the way back of the recording, just because that's all they could do. The horn players were in the front, and it kind of just dispersed backwards that way. So I find it interesting that, like, I agree, it's also another tool that you can utilize in your arsenal. How has that like changed how you approach playing, or how you're crafting grooves, like outside of like taking resources from JoJo or Questlove? So like, let's say you're practicing something. Are you just messing around with it to try to find new ideas, or is there some sort of other inspiration that kind of kicks you into that zone?
Well, usually it's aimed at solving a very specific problem. Like, let's say I'm playing with a pop artist and there's like only programmed drums on the record. And I want to recreate the sound of the record, but also have it feel live, if we're going to play these songs live. So, um, yeah, so usually there'll be a problem. Like, let's say I want the sound of well, here's an example. If you play all of those electronic parts on your drum pad during the show, and you don't have a sound guy that's like, or an engineer that you travel with or something, if you're just like at the local bar, um, and it could be anybody working the sound, then often what will happen is that they'll put the electronic drums way too quiet compared to the acoustic drums. Um, and but anyway, this is not a very important example, but what I'm getting at is that this problem of the levels between the acoustic and electronic drums being so like such a huge gap between them, that led me to start using triggers so that I could get the acoustic sound and the electronic sound at the same time. So it sounds electronic, but you also have the power of the acoustic drums in the room. Or let's say another problem you have to solve is like, we want to play a song with an exact song form that has backing tracks, but we want to improvise the solo section. Like, we want to have an open song length. And so you can do that in Ableton Live. Like, you can map it all out so you have like the song plays through all the backing tracks to a certain point, and then you can loop the next section automatically until you say go, and then you hit a drum pad or a key or a pedal or something, whatever you want, and then it'll trigger the next section. And it's actually not that easy necessarily to do that in a way that it like automatically moves from one scene to another in Ableton. So yeah, usually it's a problem-solving thing, but it's also shown me like how many more tools I have available, like to express different ideas. And we do a lot of stuff with Sungazer in particular, where the drums are triggering synths, and not just drum sounds, but like I'm playing chords with the drums, and those chords are tied to, Adam's computer, and then he can control things with his like bass, and it's all like interconnected, and so that's like given us a whole new array of options, when it comes to making music. So in that sense, it's changed everything, because it has given us like so much more to do. Like, when that's possible, then you write music differently.
That's a really unique approach. I got to actually bring up the level of my mic real quick, because chat's telling me I need to just bring up my levels. Chat, does everything sound all right? I hate to cut off a very interesting answer to a question.
No worries. I'll take this opportunity to try and pop in the chat here.
Both are a little low. All right, so I just got to bring us both up a little bit. 1 second. Shawn, do some talking for me.
Okay, test one. Okay, I am here. Look, there I am.
Check 1 2 1 2. It's hopefully that should be a little bit better. Bring up the volume a little bit. No worries, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Really appreciate it, y'all, for bearing with us. And if you guys don't know who this guy is, you should know who this guy is. This guy is a fantastic drummer based out of Berlin. If I recall correctly, you're from Connecticut originally, right?
Close, Colorado.
Oh, that's right. My memory's the worst.
Same letter.
My memory is literally the worst sometimes, so I apologize.
That's okay. I lost you for a second there. Yeah, I'm from Colorado, close to Boulder.
What was it like living in Colorado, or what was like the music scene like along those lines?
It was great in terms of music. Like there was a lot of school programs. Another thing that you mentioned earlier is marching bands, and that's something I got super serious with, like drumline and all that. And at the time, Colorado has had the fastest growing drumline scene, I guess you could say. So there was tons of opportunities to play professionally. Like I knew a couple of guys that were like playing as session guys as a living, who I was taking lessons from, but that always seemed to me to be a very hard thing to do. And even today, like, I don't know, there's not that much of a professional music scene. Like there's not a lot of money to be made there. You can play in churches and you can play weddings, but I don't know. I think it'd be very hard to make ends meet as a musician there. But otherwise, everything else, it was a great place to grow up.
I bet the scenic view around Colorado must have been nice. So you probably got to get out and do some like what's it, hitchhiking or in the trails or like I've never been to Colorado, so I can't say.
Yeah, I lost you for a second there too. You're asking about hiking.
Yeah, something along the lines of like the looks of what it was. I've never been to Colorado, so I don't want to assume.
Oh,
yeah. But anyways, why don't we get back?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Why don't we get back into that electronic stuff? Because you kind of left off at a really good point of how your performances with Sungazer has really transformed yours and Adam's perspectives of writing music in general. Are there specific techniques outside of like the advancement of technology with using drum triggers or some other stuff that has at least made you start to think differently? Or is there like, for anybody that's maybe trying to get into writing more electronic music, do you have a recommendation on where to start?
YouTube. That's where I learned everything I know about electronics and music production. And yeah, I mean, I studied music at college, but I would have liked to also study some electronic production and recording techniques. I should have studied more of that, but I ended up learning a lot on my own anyway. So yeah, YouTube is a good place to start. So what was the first part of your question?
I'm just trying to, like, any techniques along those lines or things that you picked up along the way.
Well, the drum triggers open up a lot of possibilities. it's on the surface, like, yeah, you can just play a sounds with the triggers, but there's so much more that you can do. Like, you can trigger effects, and you can um, like do sidechain compression using MIDI. I don't know if how many of the people watching will know what that is, but like, um, yeah, you can do like all kinds of crazy stuff with the triggers aside from just like playing a drum sound. So that's a big one. I mean, learning how to use Ableton in a way that, well, I'm gonna borrow some wordage from Zack Danziger, who we took a lot of inspiration from. Zack Danziger is an amazing drummer based out of New York. He is uh, the drummer for Mr. Barrington, as well as what is an Edit Bunker bands. But a lot of the stuff he's involved in now exploits this kind of technology. And his launch we kind of borrowed for Sungazer is that you can use this technology to have the computers play along to you rather than you just playing along to it. Like, instead of just playing along to a fixed track, it's like, I don't know, you plug in your iPod with the drumless track and you play along to that. You could do that, or you can use different features in the software and the interconnectivity between instruments, like through MIDI, like connecting the keyboards to the drums and all of this to like insert more improvisation into the music while using electronic sounds. So that, I mean, there's like, yeah, many like little techniques we could talk about, but like the overarching philosophy is that is like, how can we make essentially electronic music more musical? How can we take away some of the roboticness of it and like, use our musicianship to shape the form of the song? We can like improvise and do something completely different every night, but have the electronics follow us because we've got it programmed to like it follow us in a certain way. So yeah, that's what I find really exciting. And then like there's lots of potential for artificial intelligence to like do all kinds of crazy stuff that we don't even know yet. Like, for example, a very basic one, like there's this add-on for it's a Max for Live program, which is like basically for developers who can like develop their own stuff for Ableton Live, like extra plugins and stuff. And they came up with one that can um, change the tempo. It can like follow the tempo of a live drummer, basically. So if you slow down or speed up um, without playing to a click track, it can follow you with the backing track. And that was already like several years ago that they came up with that. So like I think there's a lot of really interesting potential for all kinds of stuff. I don't know exactly what people will come up with, but like certainly you could do some crazy stuff.
It seems like to me that at this point, we're so driven by technology that we're pretty much like you could technically say the computer is its own interest or treat it as an additional instrument, because it's already just like a such a
Yeah,
broad dictionary of stuff you have to learn. There's so many things regarding to just the endless possibilities of being able to play it along with something that will follow you instead of you following it. Like, the computer following you is actually really the something that I didn't really, and I haven't really messed with drum triggers before, but that's fascinating to me because like there's not many things where there's not many like I guess like other than like having a one-to-one person relationship where you're playing, like let's say we're both playing something, musically speaking, we'll have that intimate relationship with making music with one another, and we're both like going to react. But it's very fascinating that technology, technically speaking, is like starting to make that kind of narrative, in that sense where it's following you. But the question, I guess, then is like, how would technology react back to you or along those lines. But I guess like you said, the possibilities are kind of endless. It's it's kind of crazy, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and not only like how does the technology react to you, but how do you react to it? I mean, it's a two-way street, and yeah, you could definitely get into some crazy sci-fi territory that way, like especially as the technology advances. But
Do you
yeah,
weirdly
it's crazy.
do you really see the foresee the future of like computers or AIs, let's say, if we're going to go that route of artificial intelligence being on a significant level as a serious musician? Could you potentially see that happening?
Oh, I'm definitely not the right person to answer that question. I
Yeah,
have no idea.
it's an out of left
I
field
mean,
question. I realize that.
yeah, I mean, probably it's it seems to be trending in that direction for everything else. So why not?
Honestly, you never know what to expect nowadays, and it's just kind of crazy to me. But I think that's the so fascinating thing, like you were talking about Zack Danziger or even Mark Juliana with his beat music stuff. Both of them are like doing
Yeah,
world breaking material at this point, with like kind of blending the two worlds of electronic music and the real music or authentic acoustic music that I guess we were normally used to doing that. At what point in your life did like I guess outside of the electronic gig that you had, were you like before you entered into the electronic realm, were you okay with just playing like with a jazz group or doing jazz standards or just any kind of material before that kind of entered into your life?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I I guess in the early days, I put such a heavy emphasis on being able to play anything, and I was like really content doing that. Like I was happy to play in the class, like the school bands, the orchestral stuff, or in the jazz band, or in rock bands with my friends, or to play like along to fusion records and in the room or whatever. I really definitely early on was focused on just like having the like broadest set of skills possible. And I wasn't really concerned too much about like making my own artistic statement. And that was something that came later. And I had like a very formative few years living in New York, living with Adam Neely and a guitarist named Elliot Klein. And that was when I started to like hone in more on my own voice. Like I still don't know if I have my own voice, but at least like trying to cultivate my own vision for things rather than just like yeah executing other people's vision, which I was very happy to do for a long time, and I still am. But definitely like as time has gone on, I've like moved more in the direction of yeah exploring my own ideas, and that's what Sungazer is. I mean, for both Adam and I, it's like this is our chance to just do what we do.
I think that's the best part is like when you finally get to a point in your life where you can like start to do something that you've been truly like wanting to experience or trying to do yourself. It's funny for me because when I got out of school, I kind of started doing that immediately. And I guess you could say there's not a quote unquote right or wrong thing for when, you're trying to make a living as a musician. But I guess like it seems like to me a lot of people nowadays it helps to be within the scene and it helps to know a lot of people and work with other people first before doing your own project. Outside of that, was there a point before Sungazer even happened that you think like impacted you that you wanted to do your own stuff, or you were just okay with being like if you had to be a sideband for the rest of your life? I bet you wouldn't complain, but I'm just curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I it was happening gradually before that. I mean, heck, it's also easy. Excuse me. It's easy to say that like even in my earliest experiences in high school, I was still like inserting a bit of my personality into the music. But yeah, that being said, it wasn't a huge focus of mine until the early days when I was living in New York. So after I graduated college, I moved to New York. Um, and then, yeah, I was playing a lot of sideband stuff, but I was also, doing, I was also in projects where I was more creatively involved. Um, you know, let's see. I mean, there's like so many things that I was doing at the time, but yeah, it was like a gradual thing. And then I guess there was another band before Sungazer called Inside Outside, which was also with Adam. We have an album on Bandcamp. It was with a keyboardist from Belgium named Wim Layson. That was a really fun project, and you can kind of hear the roots of Sungazer in there. But yeah, I mean, it was all. I don't think there was a single point. It was just a gradual thing.
I find it funny too, where it's just like you're gonna have. I didn't even know that album existed, so I'm gonna make sure I check that out. Probably after we're done talking or after today's stream, because like it goes to show that with like any kind of beginning that you have along those lines, you got started somewhere. Something else kind of procured the start of Sungazer along those lines, and I love all the stuff that you guys do. It's really quite imaginable. I actually haven't gotten a chance to check the band out yet live, so I plan to do so the next time you guys are in New York or wherever. New York's easy for me because I'm in New Jersey, so it's an hour drive at the worst case scenario. I do kind of want to get into your practice and your thought process behind a lot of your playing, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
So, as a drummer, what are some things you try to do to push yourself to get better? And how do you effectively manage your practice time?
Oh boy. Okay, let me answer the second part first because that might also answer the first part. I have found for me what works best is when I focus intensely on one thing rather than like splitting my attention among like the 10,000 things that I would like to improve. I end up making more progress if I just say, okay, this month it's foot technique or it's coordination or it's is like, and when I put in that intense focus, then I actually see results. Whereas if you try and split your attention among two, you end up not making really any progress in any of them. So that's how I tend to think about um, what I'm going to practice or like how I'm going to manage my practice time. It's like I try not so much to manage my time, but rather to manage my priorities.
Mm.
And think like I've got a list of you know dozens of things that I would like to improve in my playing, but what's the most important thing I could work on for the next month or the next 3 months? So that's how I think about that. And then like as far as what I actually do, I mean that's a super that really depends on what it is that I'm working on. We can definitely get into specifics, but yeah, that would definitely depend on what skill I'm trying to improve.
I think the coolest part is like you're using your YouTube channel almost as like a chance to like give yourself a chance. It's almost like a vlog at this point where you're kind of capturing certain moments in your life of where you are in your career. And I think sometimes some people look at these different videos that people post online of like, this is, how does this person do all this? Or they show a finished product, quote unquote, of something versus like with your content you put out there. I feel like you're not only showing a piece of yourself, but you're actually showing your progress you make for everything you're working on. Like you did one video for playing a drum set for a lefty setup drum set for a whole month, and I'm curious,
Yeah.
what caused that inspiration outside of like seeing you do so much open-handed playing.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even remember why, like what triggered that. I think probably a few different things triggered it. For one, I was trying to improve my left foot, and it's like it's kind of an annoying problem to like want to deal with this left foot, because the reason I wanted to do it, um,
Hold on one second, chat.
For Sungazer's tour, the hardest parts involve like double bass playing, but I don't do a lot of double bass playing with Sungazer. It's just like a few moments that are like hard enough that I have to focus 90% of my time in the practice room to make those like 30 seconds of the show clean. So I was like kind of fed up with that. It's like I'm not going to get anywhere if I like am only able to work on this like a little bit. I need to like fully immerse and like get my left foot to do more. And on top of that, I had always kind of had an interest in open-handed drumming, and I always like wanted to be balanced with my limbs. And so I thought maybe this was just like the little push I needed to I don't know, to get over my I don't know, my kind of roadblock at the time. And it just sounded like fun, and also, you know, we had just found out that all the concerts were canceled, and it was like, well, now is as good a time as any.
It's a very fascinating thing, because I can totally relate, where we had, you know, I had quite a few gigs canceled along those lines. So it's like we're trying to utilize something to kind of fill our time with, you know, we're never really going to have this much time to ourselves to do other things in our life, I don't think. You know, we don't know when all of this COVID and protesting Black Lives Matter stuff is going to end, or come to a point where we'll get back to normalcy. So I think that's a great thing that you at least put yourself in a position where it's like, okay, I'm going to have this time. What at least can I do with it? Or, you know, how can you push yourself to challenge your the way you think, the way you approach playing the drums in general. I probably speak for a lot of the people watching, because I know for me, I remember I started out playing open-handed when I first got like into drumming, but then, you know, it was because of jazz band that I wanted to like actually, you know, I remember specifically it was another drummer in jazz band in 6th grade or 7th grade actually that was like, no, you should play cross so you can play the same ride pattern on the hi-hat. So it's like, you know, I tell a lot of people on my stream that things are normally preference, and it's up to the player of what they ultimately want to do. I would believe for you, you know, you trying to give yourself as many options so you can kind of give yourself this sense of freedom when you're playing, or do you like to think you have a bag of tricks that you can pull out in any certain moment when you're in the zone, let's say?
You mean with the lefty or the open-handed stuff in general?
Yeah, we could kind of
the
think about.
connection dropped out for a second there, so
Sorry about that.
I didn't quite get the whole.
I guess like what I was trying to refer to was the idea of you having a bag of tricks. My mentor Victor Lewis, who I studied with when I was at college, he was like thinking, you know, these are just things you can have in your bag of tool, or your tool bag, so you can pull out whatever tools you need at certain moments in time. Do you think that's you know, from that experience of spending that month playing, you know, a left-handed kick, so you could work your left foot on things that you're weak at? Do you think that as like, okay, now I can utilize this whenever I feel like, you know, I need it, or whenever you're in the zone playing with Sungazer or whomever? Do you feel like this is just an additional thing that'll help you out for future scenarios?
Okay, yeah, actually, well, interestingly, I might say no. I feel that might not quite fall in that category. Like if I think about a bag of tricks, like that I can pull stuff from, like I don't know if that's like super practical, like compared to like, I don't know, let me learn like a certain Brazilian groove. That might be a nice trick that I can pull out like for a gig or something. I'm probably not going to be confronted with the situation where I'd like literally have to perform on a lefty drum set, you know, like last minute notice. But I do think I mean, I see it more as like just long term progress, or like what's the best way to word that? I mean, yeah, I see it more of a just like a way for me to keep improving, um, and a way to like work on my weaknesses. That yeah, I guess that's a very general answer to give, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's like a party trick I would like pull out. Like, look, I'm playing open-handed now. It's more
Yeah.
like in say 5 years, maybe I would like to play a whole gig open-handed or something. I mean, I could probably do it like this year or something, but yeah, it's more like a long term. Just like let me just work on my playing.
Totally. It's like one of those scenarios where, I've seen so many drummers do stick flips, or, you've seen like Mike Portnoy where he just looks at somebody off stage and throws a stick, and you just see the stick go off stage and then they throw it back to him, or like, it's not like one of those scenarios where it's just like all of a sudden I'm Mike Mangini and I'm going to, play a whole song lefty cuz that guy's a maniac, or something along the lines. But I find it
Yeah.
fascinating because at least for you, and I guess from my understanding, it just gives you something different to think about and a new challenge, especially with like the times that we're in. And I bet that like at least open your eyes and ears to like thinking differently on how you now approach the drum set normally. Like how does it feel now with like
Hmm.
setting your kit back up to righty, since most people play righty nowadays? And do you ever have second thoughts about like, was this a positive thing or a negative thing, or was this experience for you just something that you could like look back at and say, "Hey, I did that."
Oh yeah, I think it was definitely worth the experience. I mean, it like if you're only doing something for a month, like you've already capped the downside. Like it's not like I wasted 10 years of my life doing something that wasn't worth it. It's like you can do anything for a month, and it's worth it just to do it, just to try it and see how you feel. You know, I like to do those kinds of experiments, like even outside of music. Like let me try a different diet for a month, or like let me like I don't know, restrict myself from I don't know, no drinking for a month or something, just like to see how I react in that situation. And that was another, yeah, kind of like another one of these like self experiments, or like, yeah, whatever, just like a thing to do to like see what it's like. And yeah, it definitely like got some new perspective out of it. You know, as I talk about in the video, it really surprised me how much I was able to progress in a month. I mean, not that I'm like perfect, or like not that I'm even close to how I could play righty, but like still it kind of opened my eyes that you can get a lot done in a short amount of period, like in a short period of time, if you focus on it. And it's kind of obvious advice on one hand. It's like if you practice something, you're going to get better at it. Duh.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to be reminded of that. As dumb as it sounds. So yeah, that was a big eye opener. One thing, interestingly, is that when I look at a left-handed drum set now, it doesn't make me go like, "Whoa, what's happening here?" Like it just like looks, oh yeah, that looks normal.
That's
So
hilarious. That's actually hilarious because then it's like just picture it. You go to a gig and the drum kit is actually set up lefty, and the owner's like, "Oh, hey, we actually have lefty drummers play here like 90% of the time. So hope you're okay with that." Or the sound guy says something like that, man. It's just funny because it's
yeah,
yeah, it's so unusual to us along those lines, at least for most drummers in the society or in the community nowadays. Whether you have hobbyists or you have professionals like us, or just anybody in general, it's always a fascinating thing. Like my mom always told me she wanted to learn at least something. She writes with the left hand, but she's actually like pretty ambidextrous. So like one of these days I'm gonna actually like show her how to play some stuff on the kit, and I'm probably just gonna leave it set up righty because she's probably okay with that. Are you actually ambidextrous, or did you start out like?
no.
Mm,
No, I'm definitely right-handed, like in every sense. I mean, yeah, all the like lefty skill I have is like through deliberate work.
But that's really cool though, man. I give you major props for committing yourself to something like that for a month's worth of time. Talk to me a little bit about like what may be something that will help you like give yourself a sense of like how you can commit yourself better. Also, thank you Super Soul Bros for the raid. I hope you guys are all doing well. Sean, we just had a huge raid. We have like probably over 100 people watching the stream now. So
Oh,
appreciate you
sick.
guys.
What's up,
Yeah.
everyone?
Welcome everybody. I'll quickly interrupt the podcast, and it's great to have you guys here. I hope you all are enjoying yourselves so far. Oh heck, indeed. My name's Dominic Palombi. I play drums and music here on Twitch, and this is our second episode of our DomCast series, where I interview fellow musicians, friends, professionals, other Twitch streamers, and whatnot. I am very honored and pleased to have Mr. Shawn Crowder of Sungazer joining us today. If you guys do not know him, he has a fantastic YouTube channel posting educational content about drums and all that good stuff. And he also, is a fantastic drummer. So it's wonderful to have you guys here. I really appreciate it. We're getting pretty knee deep into conversation, but for anybody that wants to answer some questions, if you guys go to my Discord page, there is a section that calls Ask Dom Palumbi. Go there and post some questions so me and Sean can answer some question for you guys if you are interested. And thank you Soul Bros for the raid. I hope you all are having a great Tuesday. So to kind of tie back what we were trying to get into a little bit, committing yourself for a month to playing drums lefty. Could you talk to me about just the mindset of how you commit yourself to doing something better, or what has been more effective for you to allow yourself to maintain doing that for so long?
I think probably the thing that keeps me doing stuff like that is that I actually see tangible results from doing it. So I think something like playing lefty or whatever your opposite side is, like that's something that demands a little bit of like long-term work. Like you can't just do it for a weekend and then like, this is too hard, I'm going to change my drums back. Like you've got to, you know, sit and do it for a little while. And, even a month isn't that long, but yeah, I think that like you have to commit to something in order to see results. And the I could see you being afraid to commit because you're like, oh well, what if I miss out on this other thing that maybe is more important for me to practice. um, and like you should think about that. Like you should carefully choose what you're going to practice, because maybe there is something more important that you're going to practice. I mean, keep in mind that I already work as a professional musician, and I like studied it in college, and like I have a whole background of like a thousand other things that I worked on before this. Like it was more important for me to get my jazz standard chops together and like learn pop rock cover songs and get my groove down and like this and that and the other. Like there's a ton of things that were way more important to me, um, you know, before this. So yeah, like flipping your kit around might not be the most important thing, but I don't know, maybe it will be, because also if you want to like become ambidextrous, even if it's just with the hand, like the earlier you start, the easier it's going to become. So it depends what your priorities are. Um, so you do have to be careful about what you choose, but then once you've like honed in on what is most important to you, then go for it with everything you've got. I mean, one thing that always motivated me is that I knew that there were so many other musicians who were also trying to do the same thing, that were competing with me. And, um, I had to like give it everything I've got, because everybody else is working super hard. So like I have no choice but to like work more than them, so that's kind of where some of the motivation came from, at least early on. Is like, yeah, I don't have any choice because it's already hard enough to like make it as a musician. That like I can't afford to give it anything other than my absolute best.
I totally feel that, man. Because like it's always funny for me. It's something I've actually feel like I struggled with for a long time. Just even today, like I've been lucky that I've been able to maintain this streaming schedule that's almost 4 or 5 days a week. Whereas we have to kind of put ourselves on this almost this sense of pressure, or put ourselves on a sense of or a level of pressure, I should say. What are some of the things that you're doing outside of like drumming or music in general that like are a part of your routine? Like maybe if you have a routine, talk to me about that and see how that has helped you continue to just do what you normally do with regards to your career.
Yeah, I mean, I am a big fan of habits, like carefully placed habits in the right place. Um, especially in these COVID times, like my day is the same pretty much every day. Um, but I think that having habits, even though you might say that it like makes your life boring or something, having certain routines like makes it so you don't have to think about the same things every day. Like you don't have to make decisions on the little things, like what you're gonna have for breakfast or what you're gonna um, I don't know how you're gonna spend the first hour of your day or how you're gonna like. I even have habits when it comes to music. Like when I'm setting stuff up on tour and I have like a lot of electronics, I have a lot of moving pieces, and any one of those pieces, like a bad cable or something plugged in wrong, can like kind of take down the show. So I have certain habits in place that like I'm very OCD about, but I recognize that it's like a little excessive, but it reminds me that I'm like doing things almost like I'm flying a space shuttle or something. Like I have a list of like things that I have to do, and it has to be done in this way. Like I have to like have the cable sit in a certain way wrapped around the snare drum, and like stupid things like that. But the nice thing is I don't have to like make that decision I don't have to think about it, and so that frees me up during the show to have a lot more like brain power to make musical decisions. So I'm like trying to remove as many unnecessary decisions as possible in the rest of my life so that I can use like the limited willpower I have for that day to the max during the show.
Are you somebody that like I guess to for a couple more questions? Are you somebody that likes to write things down and post it on the wall, or like have something blatantly obvious to remind you of? So you have this checklist that you can kind of go through every day. Because for me, I know I struggle a lot of the time with like trying to maintain a regular schedule, or I have hopes and dreams of things that I like to accomplish in a day's span of time, but then sometimes I just don't get to any of those things, even though I know we're human. We're not always going to be able to be this perfection computer that can check off every single part on that list. So like I'm curious to know what are some effective things that you do to like at least make you have a better mindset when you're going into that state.
Yeah, I mean, I do like to write things down to an extent. I mean, I don't have like my walls full of like post-its or anything like that, but yeah, I do think it helps to write things down. One thing that I found really helpful is I read this book not too long ago. I think it's called The One Thing or something like that. It's like the basically the point of the book is to identify the one thing on your to-do list that will have the most impact, and like focus all your energy on doing that one thing before you like get into the little tiny tasks that aren't as important. So like you have urgent tasks and you have important tasks, and usually the important tasks are not super urgent. Like I've got to have this email done by Friday. Like all that stuff is urgent, but it's not as important as like I need to like really fix maybe some fundamental problem in my playing before this tour in a month, and it's like a month feels like a long ways away, but you've got to sit down and do that important work. So I don't get obsessed with like writing down every single little thing I have to do, but I do in general try and have like maybe, I mean, ideally one, maybe two, if I can squeeze it in, like important, like super important things that will probably take me a few hours. Like if it's a video editing thing, like that might take me the entire day, but that's like my one thing. And if that's the only thing I accomplish that day, then that was a successful day. So yeah, that's something that's been helpful. It's just like identifying your priorities and yeah, yeah. So that's what I would say.
And I guess I'm curious to know, you being, you could say yourself as a content creator at this point on YouTube. I bet I'm curious to know what it feels like with having to do all of that legwork yourself. Placing the camera down, doing the recording, making sure all the scene, for whatever kind of video that you're recording on lines. It's like all the little details that you have to kind of check off. I'm curious to know, like, what goes through your brain when you're either coming up with a new video idea, or how do you feel when you put in this much time and effort to record a video for people to watch what seems like, only 5 to 10 minutes, I know could seem like a couple hours.
Yeah. Oh, it's an insane amount of work. For some of the videos I've done, it takes weeks sometimes. I mean, not all of them. Some of them I can crank out a lot faster, but yeah, it's definitely been a learning process. I mean, I'm not a trained videographer or anything like that. As most people on YouTube are in the same boat. So I've like definitely learned a lot about how cameras work and like, what the right settings should be and why that is. And like, I've gone deep down the rabbit hole of watching like photography and videography YouTubers talking about how they do things. And like, I've got really good with using Final Cut and like, what shortcuts, I need to use. And that, I don't know, it just like, it's an entirely, like it's another skill set that I won't say you need it as a musician, but like it's the same with what you're doing on Twitch. Like that's an entire skill set too, like figuring out all the streaming stuff and getting the mics working right and the lighting and the all of that. It's a lot. So yeah, YouTube has been a huge learning experience with that. I mean, in the beginning, like 10 years ago, I was only posting videos occasionally of me playing, just like I filmed the gig and then put it up, and I didn't like think anything of it, beyond just putting it up there. I didn't like do any color, I didn't think about any of that stuff. But now it definitely is a part of my workflow, and I definitely have to kind of consider that from the beginning now, because now I know what I'm getting into when I'm making a certain kind of video. And so like certain kinds of videos, like I don't know if I want to do anymore, like making a tour vlog, for example. Like they're a lot of fun to watch, but they are so much work. Like not only on the road to be like filming all these moments, and also you got to be careful because like maybe your bandmates are like tired of you sticking a camera in their face, and you don't want to like ruffle feathers there either. But yeah, then after the fact, it's just like this last tour vlog I did was in this video called The Art of Double Drumming, and it was about our tour in India with Sungazer and Shiv Saran and his band, and we had two drummers in both of the bands. So it was kind of like I was telling the story of our tour in India while also telling about our experience playing as two drummers in the same band, which was, I mean, it was a really amazing tour and like a really, like a video, like I really enjoyed. I don't know if I enjoyed making it as much as I enjoyed like seeing the final results, but it just like took so much time, to do something like that. And I've done like other videos like that before, like the documentary style ones. It takes so much work. So I'm definitely more hesitant about doing those, or at least when I do, maybe I'm not going to film every single moment. It's just like, okay, I need like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I don't want to like fill my hard drives with dozens of hours of stuff to go through because that's just like too much.
I feel that, especially with like, with the line of work that we're in, it sometimes you feel like you always have to capture yourself just so you can have that content. Or it's like, I bet it's one thing that's in the back of your brain that feels annoying at times where you feel like, I have to bring this with me because this is going to be a great experience for your YouTube channel. Do you feel like that takes away from the musical experiences that you could share with your bandmates when you play with somebody on tour, knowing that you have to bring a camera or you have to bring extra gear in order to capture everything correctly? Or do you ever think to yourself like, nah, I just want to, enjoy myself and leave it as a memory that of a story that you can tell others, when you meet more people along those lines?
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, definitely have moments like that where like, okay, it's just too much to try and film this one tonight. Let's just do it old school, like let's just play the show, and that's what it's gonna be. Um, yeah, I mean, uh, what was the first part of your question again? I mean, I definitely
I guess
experienced that.
I think it was along the lines of like, does it bother you sometimes when you have?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely can bother you, but I guess I don't really let it bother me because if I don't want to make a video out of something, then I just don't. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna do the gig, and that's gonna be that. So I always kind of reserve that right for myself. So like, I don't have to make content out of everything. That would just be too exhausting. But on the flip side, having a YouTube channel has like also given me an excuse to like and a little extra motivation to do some things that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. Like yeah, like flip my kit around lefty. Like that's a little bit more exciting when I know that I can tell the story afterwards. Or like learning the black page. Like I didn't really have an interest in that piece of music before, and I never would have like thought of a reason. Like there's no reason I would have ever learned that song unless like somebody asked me to do it for a gig. But like having a YouTube channel where I can like talk about the experience and talk about the music, it gives me an excuse to like practice some of this stuff that is really fun to practice, but might not otherwise have an outlet. So yeah, it definitely has both sides. Like sometimes it can be yeah, too much to film everything. But on the other hand, it like opens up new opportunities, like things I would like to work on that now I have the opportunity to, since I know I'm gonna be able to share it with other people.
That's cool, man. That's really really cool. I think let's transition. I want to get some questions from people in chat and for anybody that wants to go in. So if you guys can join my Discord page, if you haven't been a part of it, or if you want to join us and be what we're a part of, hit !Discord. That'll take you to the channel, and then from there, go to the Ask Don Palumbi section. If you guys have any questions you want to ask me and Shawn, or Shawn and I for grammar purposes, we'll get to a few of them for you guys and kind of go from there. This was a nice deep conversation, Shawn. I'll tell you, man. I don't think we've had the chance to like really dig this deep, even though I know this is probably only our third or fourth time talking. I've really enjoyed this so far, and it's really great to get to know you and kind of get inside your head on how you approach a lot of these things. So it's really awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So we got a few questions already. Like I said, chat, for anybody that wants to ask, feel free to ask away. Go to our Ask Don Palumbi section in my Discord page. Shawn has his own Discord page too, but I believe we should link his Patreon. His Patreon also, if you guys want to support him and his endeavors that he does on his YouTube channel, go to his Patreon. That's how you can get into his Discord channel. First question that we got here from PF3K. Shawn, do you have any personal strategies and methods for making 4/4 or other common time signatures more fun to play over? So I guess we can both kind of put our insights on that. I'll let you kind of start this off.
More fun to play over. Well, I guess it depends on what's making it like not fun to play for you. I mean, I think there's so much that you can explore in 4/4. I mean, it's like every musician that gets into odd time signatures inevitably has like at least a brief period where they're like, oh wow, like they've discovered this new world and now like everything that they knew before is just like boring and stupid. But like I don't know, there's a lot of great music to be made in within simple structures. And if it's like the simplicity that you're not interested in, like there's also a lot of ways to make 4/4 more complicated if you want. I don't even know where to start, but like yeah, this you can like yeah dive into all the different. I mean, there's so many different permutations of different rhythms you can play within 4/4, or like different meters you could play over 4/4, or like how about let's forget rhythm entirely and like let's just talk about the emotions that you can evoke, and that can be an entirely like other thing that you can explore when you're playing with other musicians. So I mean, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to say there without like a more specific question, but yeah, if you want to take a stab at it.
I think I guess like the interesting thought you're kind of procuring is like how can we take something so simple and make it more interesting? Because a lot of the times we always have to remind ourselves about like music is we do this because we want to kind of we want to find this I'm struggling with the word that I'm trying to think of, but it's almost like we want to kind of make others feel something first. Or I always think, we as artists, we can both say we're artists at this point. Our main goal is to make other people feel something, whether it's a positive or negative effect, or something emotionally along those lines. And even if it's as simple as a 4/4 beat, every person that you see or every drummer that you see in today's day and age is gonna play it differently, even if it's the same 8/8 notes, four on the floor with snare on 2 and 4. Everybody's going to have that personality or something that's going to be different about them that's going to make them interpret that same groove. Even if if like 100 drummers play the same groove, it's going to sound different based on if you individualize every single person. So I guess like the concept of having fun is always going to be different varying on the person in that sense. I also agree, if we're taking something that's kind of like taking the time out of the question, so then we're only worrying about, the movements of those notes and how we can, carve those notes to, curate different sounds even. Changing the voices just to give yourself a whole nother feeling. Even like if we have to like complex the rhythm a little bit, whether if it's using sixteenths or triplets, or maybe even like an odd meter grouping that doesn't even exist yet, or something that's maybe of the like something that's too far of the means of what music technically is. Like I don't know if there's a groundbreaking rhythm that exists out there yet, or somebody that hasn't discovered something new that could lead to something making it more fun. Because I guess the ultimate definition of fun is different based on every single person. So I totally agree with what you're saying though, because it definitely to make it more fun is different based on every single person. What may be fun to Shawn may be more different to me in that respect. Whether if he likes to have a fancy drum trigger that gets this snare sound that's different on his 2 and 4 versus me, where I'm like wanting to play a different polyrhythm over the same groove, it's gonna kind of throw it for a loop, if you will. But it
Yeah, and if I could add one more thing to that,
please.
is that even playing the simplest thing, there is always something that you can focus on that is like incredibly interesting. Like there is always another layer to it. Like even to this day, I could sit down and play the most basic beats that every single person watching this can play, and I will find things that I can improve, and I can think, oh, like how is the balance of like the levels between all of the instruments, or like how is the spacing between those eighth notes? Like could I like pull something back or push it forward, like massage that a little bit to make it groove, in a different way. Like there is always another level that you can get to, and that's something that I used a lot of times when I was in situations where I was playing music that maybe on the surface didn't seem that interesting. Like, say I'm playing like another wedding, and it's like, oh god, I know all these songs, but when you get past that surface level and like think about this as an opportunity to like improve your musicianship, either through some technical aspect you're going to focus on, or maybe it's just the challenge of like, can I play an entire gig without a single mistake? And like think about it like a game like that. Like there's always something more that you can do even when you're playing like something simple.
Yeah, we could take pretty much anything and make it a game at this point. Even like bring it, taking only snare drum, bass drum, and hi hat to a gig or something, or you have like different heads for different situations. How many drummers put stuff on top of their snares to really change the vibe of just the sound in general. We didn't even I feel like we didn't even talk about the sound is also just another topic. Like I feel like we could have a whole nother conversation just talking about how to play a 4/4 groove and all the hundreds and hundreds of different possibilities that we could go over. So really neat,
Totally.
really neat question actually. So we got one from Ash. Question for both of you: what were some of your favorite bands you listened when you were growing up? I'll take start on this along those lines. I know like if we kind of broaden that a little bit towards drummers or people that inspired us along those lines, Buddy Rich was a big one for me. At least from what I remember watching watching just a lot of videos. I saw a tons and tons of Buddy Rich videos, and then Gene Krupa was somebody that really spoke out to me. So it was like Buddy Rich's big band. I listened to a variety of musicians, anywhere from like John Mayer to Miles Davis to um, it's actually escaping me of how many different bands. Because like if you looked on my iPod, I bet Sean you had like did you have an iPod growing up?
Oh yeah.
So we like when those were the rave and the fashion of holding on to music, everybody's playlist had like a variety of tunes. I remember I had like anywhere from Dragon Force to Daft Punk to Sonny Rollins to just like kind of all over the place. Because I guess when I was just digging into music, I wanted stuff to jam out to and play to. I even had drumless tracks just on my iPod as well, just to give myself stuff to play along the lines. So it'd be
Totally. Yeah. And I, yeah, definitely much like you, had very diverse tastes in music and still do. Um, and yeah, I also uh, some of the earliest like drumming CDs, I guess you could say, or like drumming albums, even though there's other musicians playing on them, obviously. But yeah, Betty Rich and Gene Krupa were two that came to my attention early because of uh, my dad, who plays drums. But I think one of the big ones for me early on was Dave Matthews Band. I don't know how many fans there are here, but Carter Beauford like blew my mind with like how creative his drumming was in a pop setting. Like, who is this guy on the radio? How is he getting away with playing all this cool stuff? So he was like one of my first favorite drummers, I guess. And then yeah, like Dave Weckl came after that, Dennis Chambers, and like literally anything that he played on. That was later in college, but yeah, then I mean tons of drummers and musicians, but yeah, I was listening to rock and jazz and all kinds of stuff in between.
I even remember watching back when I remember seeing one of those early videos of Carter Beauford when he's like, it's probably one of the YouTube videos that everybody has seen from his DVD series of him playing. I forget what song he was playing along to, but I remember when I first saw it, I was like, wow, that setup is incredible. And why does he have the ride cymbal like so high on his left side? Like that
Oh
was,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, it's like it was all the way over here and like almost completely like vertical, almost like a mirror, just the way that he had it set up too. So like that already is something that I remember. At least I know we can all relate with drummers, they always like. I think that was the first thing outside of them being such a great player and a command over the drum set. How did they set up their kit and how that influenced them for their playing and that stuff too? So I mean, like, you know, but yeah, Dave Matthews Band, and they're still doing it too. I think that's the other crazy thing. That band alone is definitely, I don't want to say underrated, but you know they're still like one of the old great bands. Even Earth, Wind and Fire or Chicago, I'm forgetting about, are bands that inspired me too. So, but yeah, the list.
Yeah.
I bet the list goes on for both of us.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so hard to like pick your favorite albums. There's so many, but yeah,
Cool.
those are a few of mine.
We're gonna do. How about like 2 or 3 more questions? That sound good with you?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we got one from Sora. Sean, did you watch the Whiplash movie? If you did, do you have any thoughts or take on what you want to share? Is there some movie or other media that inspired you? This is always an
Okay.
interesting question.
Well, I mean, I had already been doing this for a long time before Whiplash came out, so I don't know. I don't have a lot of thoughts on Whiplash. I mean, it's not anything I ever experienced. Like, I never had a teacher like that crazy. I mean, I understand for Hollywood they gotta like make the story a little more exaggerated in every possible like sense, but um, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was like a fun movie, but it wasn't how my life was at all.
I also feel,
uh,
yeah, I feel the
yeah.
same way. At least with regards of like, there's a fine line for a lot of us when we're brought up for music school and stuff like that. Um, and I also saw it too, but I remember when I was in college and I was actually singing with a men's glee club while I was in school. A lot of them were saying, "Oh, Dom, have you seen this?" And I was like, "No." And I remember seeing it actually flying to London when we were going on a 2 week tour, and that was the one time that I was like, all right, I'll sit down and watch this so everybody can, stop making the jokes. But
Yeah, well, it actually, I remember when I saw it. Actually, this story might be more interesting than the movie was for me, actually. But it was like I was on tour in Paris, and I was doing this European tour, and basically I was living in Paris for a month, and then like on the weekends we'd go to like Switzerland or Amsterdam or something and play a show. But then like all the rest of the time I had to like hang out in Paris. So I saw Whiplash in Paris, and I don't remember if it was in French or English, but like I remember I was still early on like learning French, so I learned a lot of swear words from Whiplash.
I'll mention my stream is a PG stream, so just
Yeah, I won't. I won't read it.
I know you won't. No, yeah.
What if they're in French?
If as long as I don't understand it, then I think you'll be all right.
I'm just kidding.
No, you're good. And I guess like the funny thing for Whiplash for me, so like I actually had a similar experience that happened to me in high school. Apparently, it was actually based off of a high school teacher in Princeton, New Jersey. So it happened in a similar state for me. I didn't go to the school that actually happened for that they wrote or designed the movie on. If anything, it's funny. I refer people to Adam Neely's video about it because I wholeheartedly agree with the way he kind of goes in depth with it and what's quote unquote right or wrong with that movie. I had a similar experience where there was a band director at the time. I actually didn't do marching band in high school, and I wanted to do jazz band. He kind of threw me some shade when I quit marching band after like a week or two, and I wasn't like really into the high tense vibe of it. But I could actually see a transition from when I was in freshman or sophomore year of high school to junior and senior year of how much he cares about music. And some people, I guess, show their caring or expression of that in many different ways. It's not that he intended on hurting anybody, I believe, and at least from what I know from those experiences, I could tell by the end of my junior year or senior year in high school that he was actually crying at one of our finals, one of our band finals, and because it just showed that he cared about what the music meant to him, and maybe some people didn't see that through his rage, but Of course, there are going to be different people that think about that stuff in many different ways. So, I don't fully agree with the movie per se, but, I guess there's good and bad things that you can get out of it. And everybody that's not a musician apparently thinks it's amazing, versus everybody I talk to that is a musician thinks it's nothing special per se.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we got another one for both of you. When it comes to learning music that's unfamiliar, say non-Western music that doesn't allow a familiar structure, how would you approach it?
Huh.
Yeah, this is a
Do you have any thoughts on
very
that?
interesting
Think
one.
about that.
I guess, like, for me, when I'm first thinking of music that's unfamiliar, it helps to do kind of some research. It helps to, like, look up the history. I guess because with both of our backgrounds, and I don't want to assume, but both of our backgrounds of learning jazz and being in jazz music, we're taught to look back at the greats. We're taught to look those who came before us and kind of carry on the traditions of that, so we can kind of carry the same ideals when we're kind of working with music that we've never done before along those lines. I guess a lot of research and reading up on the origins of that music kind of helps, so that way it gives you a better sense of what you're getting into, like whether if it's like, for me, I've been playing dance classes ever since I got out of school, so playing drum set for dance classes, it helps to kind of understand how the dancing and drumming kind of sense can kind of where that comes from, and where you can understand the rhythms and why they're playing those rhythms or how those affect in that sense. I'm curious to know Shawn's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, yeah, the tradition is super important. You have to know where it comes from, and that will also tell you some of the norms, like I guess you could call them cultural norms or musical norms in that style. Like there's certain things you do in jazz that maybe you don't do in rock or something. Like trading in a solo context is like a jazz thing, as far as I know, that came from jazz. There's like, well, okay, so actually recently, a couple of days ago, I attended this stream about Kanakal, which is the South Indian classical, like spoken word rhythmic system. Like they have syllables that are assigned to certain sounds on a certain drum, and they have a whole like rhythmic language, which I don't know a lot about. And so that was really interesting to hear, like, yeah, the way that they, like the way that music is structured, and there's like different rules that they have, that we are not used to, and you have to like learn about those if you want to play the music authentically. And actually, I was doing a tour with a group called Women of the World. It's an amazing a cappella group, 4 women singers and me on drums. So I was the one man of the world in the Women of the World. But one of the songs we did was based on the Indian like classical tradition, and I was actually playing some mallet stuff, like a vibraphone melodic part on my electronic pads. Because again, I was the only musician, like they were all like singing, and so I was the only one that was like actually playing an instrument. So I had to do these melodic things too. And I had this like short solo moment at the beginning of this tune. And I was getting kind of like a funny look from one of the women is from India. And so she was like kind of like looking at me when I would do my little solo. And she came up to me like during sound check and said, next time, why don't you try, don't end the solo on the third, like meaning the third note of the scale. Because in Indian music, we can't do that. You must end on the tonic, or like the first note of the scale. Or I think maybe you could also end on the fifth. Like there's different rules, but like you can't just like leave it open-ended in that style of music on, just any note. So like I never would have known that. And so you kind of like, it helps to have a teacher or somebody that can show you, and yeah, like listen to as much music as you can. watch YouTube videos about it. I mean, yeah, you gotta immerse if you want to play something authentically.
You probably would have never known to do that if you didn't even like get into that gig or get into that situation of that music too. So like it's funny you bring that up because like 99.9% out of 100 you're going to learn more things on the gig than I think from the research at home. And I guess like as we kind of say a lot of the times too, you're not going to like figure something out until you're put in the fire doing this. Like for me, I didn't learn this streaming
Mm-hmm.
thing. I didn't learn all of this stuff. This is a year and a half worth of time and management. But I think that's the beauty of anything we do is we can apply this kind of set of thinking of by just doing and by actively looking into and doing research and then how we can constantly manifest being able to just make things better in that sense. So like that's really funny that it's like I was actually thinking whether the tonic or the fifth because I played percussion for the men's chorus while I was in school and the one of the other drummers that I met he was playing tabla. If I recall correctly, probably the both of the tabla were tuned in a fifth between each other. I could be wrong. I'm not entirely sure, but I know those notes are normally pitched, so he has to pitch them with like a drone that kind of really like signifies the key that they're in because that's such a big part of it too. Yeah, wow,
Yeah, totally.
that's fascinating, man. That's really really neat. No problem, Plasma. I think we got time enough for one more. Because chat, what we're gonna do after this, I'm gonna take some requests from you guys. So if you guys want to hear some songs, I'll play to some of your jams and stuff like that. I think we had another question from somebody in chat. So if anybody has any last questions, I'll pick somebody. But it looks like we got from here. Painting with Ben is saying any non-drummer musicians that influence the way you play drums. Um, I'll let you kind of take this one, Sean.
Yeah, definitely. Miles Davis is one that comes to mind. He is somebody I started listening to in high school and started with the album Kind of Blue. Um, Jimmy Cobb, the drummer of that album, recently just passed away.
Yeah, rest
So
in peace.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, like that uh, that album changed a lot of things, like for jazz music. But Miles went on to do like a lot of other things, and like that was kind of impactful. Like I saw him playing so many different styles of music, and I saw his evolution from like the early bebop days into Kind of Blue into like the like more out there bebop stuff he was doing with Tony Williams and like in the 60s, and then you have like the fusion stuff in the 70s, and then even like the hip hop influenced stuff in the 80s. I mean, the guy like did a lot, and I read his biography, as a lot of jazz music students have. Um, but yeah, he was somebody that I kind of followed who was not a drummer. I mean, there's been so many musicians like I let me think about I don't have a specific example on hand, but like yeah, I can definitely be influenced by anybody, um, anybody really. Doesn't even have to be in music necessarily. Yeah, let me think about that. I'll let you know if I think of another one.
No worries, man. I think that's the cool part about us for as I was saying earlier about as artists, we can kind of take inspiration from anything. For me, it's funny because I'm always like trying to find new inspiration. Sean's an inspiration to me since I've seen him on YouTube and since I've, have gotten to know him personally at this point, which is really great. There's a bunch of musicians out there, and the list kind of is never ending. Herbie Hancock kind of stood out to me when he was talking about Miles because the way that Herbie approaches playing keys is like unlike anybody else. He lets even his relationship with the story that he told people of like saying, he was playing a gig with Miles Davis one night and he played a chord that he thought was, actually wrong, but Miles, played something to curate that chord being right. So, it was that judgment
Yeah,
of like making that chord something that actually could mean something else. It's not necessarily like there's a right or wrong thing in music. There's good or bad music, But, you know, I guess the thought of inspiration is you can be inspired by a painter, you can be inspired by a dancer, you could be inspired by a videographer. Heck, if construction inspires you, you can probably get something from that, or cooking or whatnot. And I guess, like, you know, it depends on how broad you put yourself out there for inspiration. I know for me, you know, maybe it's something that I haven't tapped into too much outside of other musicians that inspired me along those lines. But if anything, it's that next level of thinking that hopefully gets you out of the box, so that way you can give yourself a retrospect, or a step back on, you know, music as a whole versus, you know, piecemealing, you know, individuals that are, you know, greats within this whole musical realm per se.
Yeah, I definitely feel like for me also, like the more time passes, the easier it is for me to transfer lessons into music from other areas or vice versa. Like let's say in the last 5 years or so, like I don't know what that is. Like maybe it's like a solidifying of my musical abilities that like I don't know. I've definitely noticed that it's with time it's become easier to like pull lessons from I don't know from yeah to be inspired by a painter or something, um, and like somehow translate that into music, or to like yeah take a lesson from music, which I do all the time because I learned so much about life and about learning through music that you know I can definitely transfer a lot of that outside of music to learning other things.
Well,
But yeah,
yeah, yeah. Be a constant learner, chat. Be people that are always willing to take in information, because then, if anything, you're going to set yourself up for success, regardless of what you're trying to do with your lives. At least I know for me, a lot of people, when they see me play, they think, "Oh man, you're so refined." I'm still trying to learn. You know, I learned a lot of things talking to Shawn today, chat. And I'll tell you, you know, it's always great to have people in your life that you're willing to learn things from. So, Shawn, I really appreciate you being with us today, man. Any final thoughts you have on your brain you like to share with us, or something that you're dying to say?
just thanks for having me, man. It's been fun, and um, you know it's cool to see what you're doing here on Twitch. It's you know something I've been curious about for a little while, and um, I don't know if I don't want to commit myself to like now I'm gonna start streaming, although I do have a Twitch account now. But yeah, it's cool. So yeah, just thanks for having me. I'm
No worries,
glad we could
man.
do this.
I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out with us today. I really appreciate that. Chat, make sure you go sub to him on YouTube, and heck, give him some follows on his Twitch account. Maybe one of these days we'll see him online
Woo!
or whatnot. I will say the drumming community is quite strong here. So, you know, if you ever need anything or direction, I can happily take you around Twitch a little bit and show you the ropes. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like this. If you guys want to see more podcasts like this, I'll be doing these episodes every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time live on my Twitch page. And I stream 4 to 5 days a week currently. So I appreciate you guys all watching this video, and I hope you all enjoyed yourself. And until next time, this is Palombi signing off, and we'll see you in the next video.